Hey guys, Kevin from Wood Grain Junkie. I wanted to make a quick video to talk about the sled kits that I offer. I did make a video that explains sort of the differences and the assembly process, but I did make some upgrades to the kits and I wanted to talk about that in this video and also talk about some of the differences and clarify some of the questions that I've been getting recently as far as what's included and what's not. So let's get into it. Okay, so first, let's talk about the two kits that I offer. One of them is the starter kit and the other one is the essentials kit. Let's begin with the starter kit. With the starter kit, you get the 3/8 inch thick cast acrylic base. This is where you would attach your router. And these are made specifically for the trim router, so just to be clear. Your linear motion bearings and two handles. So you get the plate. The second thing you get are these two 4-inch handles with 1/4 screws, and that's to attach them here. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and attach them. Now, the nice thing about acrylic is you could use the friction to tighten it up. Don't over tighten it. You could just use the friction to give it a nice low tight and you are good to go. So you get this. You also get 4 individual plates. These are the plates that you attach your support brackets to. We're gonna talk a little bit about these because this is part of the upgrade. So if you already purchased one of my kits, you would have received these plates, but we'll talk about this in just a minute. Then you get the hardware to attach support brackets, linear guide bearings, and everything to put this whole assembly together. Okay, so that is what's included with the starter kit. Let's talk about the essentials kit. The essentials kit includes everything in the starter kit plus 4 support brackets and 4 linear motion bearings. Let's kind of put this together so you guys could see what it looks like. And I say kind of put it together, I'm just gonna sort of lay it out the way it would get assembled just so you could visualize the differences. So again, your router is here in the middle. Your linear motion bearings are attached here using 16 of your pan head screws. Then you have your brackets here, or rather your plates. And then you attach your support brackets to these plates like this. So this is what you get with the essentials kit. So it is a lot more complete than the starter kit, but you can buy the starter kit and purchase all your brackets and your bearings individually. Just make sure you're getting the correct model. All of these are to support 16mm rods. So that is the differences between the two kits that I offer. All right, so now let's talk about one of the upgrades that I made and what I'm including in the kit that I believe is gonna make assembly a lot easier. So first, let me move this off to the side. So now, instead of receiving 4 individual plates, I'm including 2 long plates for your support brackets. So this serves 2 purposes. One, it's used as an alignment tool, and then it's used as your plates for your support bracket. So let me talk about the alignment piece first. I'll move these off to the side. So one of the issues when you're aligning the rods, once you run them through your bearings, you would have to measure both ends of the rods to make sure they were equally spaced. Well, now I included 2 16mm holes on each bracket, and you would use these plates to align the rods, and now you know that they're equally spaced as you're tightening your linear motion bearings. That's going to make assembly a lot easier. And once you're done, you remove them from your rods and you attach your support brackets. So that is the upgrade that I made for the support brackets. So the other thing I wanted to include with the kits is some Loctite. Now, I haven't had any issues with my assembly, but I disassemble and assemble my setup so frequently that I don't need Loctite. As a matter of fact, this will make it worse for me to do all my prototyping and all that stuff. But if you're gonna set up your sled kit and it's gonna be more permanent, you might wanna use some Loctite to make sure that they don't loosen up over time. So I will include Loctite with either of the kits that you purchase, either the starter kit or the essentials kit. So there you go. Okay, so now I'm gonna put all of this to the side for just a minute. Because I wanna talk about what's not included in the kits that I offer. So these are the rails that sit on your bench top, and as you can see, they have a base that you could screw down to your workbench. And this setup comes with 4 linear motion bearings. Now, something to keep in mind, I have seen some vendors that offer this as a whole set, and I've seen some that just offer the rails and you have to purchase the bearings separately. So just be mindful of that. These rails, or rather this whole setup, is called the SBR 16, 16 meaning the diameter of the rail. The bearings, the part number is SBR 16UU. And like I said, most of the time you do get this as a set, but I have seen them sold individually. So just make sure it's a set and it's a pair when you're making your purchase. Something that you will not get with this set are these shaft collars. These you have to purchase separately, and this keeps your assembly from falling off. So these, you could get them any length that you want. My bench here is 3 feet by 5 feet, so I could technically get these 5 feet long. If you have a longer surface, you could get them even longer or shorter, whatever fits your needs. You shouldn't have a problem with any of these because these sit directly onto your workbench. The rods, on the other hand, and again, make sure that they are 16 millimeters, and also that they're solid steel. Don't get anything that is hollow. Those will not work. They will flex on you no matter how beefy they say they are. You need to get some solid steel rods. Now these rods that I purchased are 24 inches, and that's enough cut capacity for my needs. But you could get them a little bit longer. I probably wouldn't go longer than 36 inches. You might begin to see some flex. I'm not sure. I'm in the process of testing it out to see what the weight capacity is before it starts flexing. So just be mindful of that. So I have these at 24 inches. I think you could go up to like 36 inches and have a bit larger cut capacity, but just be mindful of that. So these are the parts that are not included in any of my kits. As a matter of fact, I don't sell any of these parts here. You're gonna have to source them from Amazon or other suppliers. So there you go. Now I have received some emails from some customers overseas. Now I'm in the US, and I'm aware that US and Canada, we don't have any issues getting all of these parts. They're readily available, and there's a number of vendors that sell these. But if you're in other countries, I have had some customers email me saying that it's a little bit difficult to find some of these parts. It is possible. You just have to do a little bit more digging. Maybe outside of Amazon, find another supplier and you know, that might be the best solution. But just be mindful that if you're outside of the US and Canada, these parts might be a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so what I want to do now is put this thing together using this new plate, which serves as an alignment tool and for your support brackets. So let's do that right now. All right, so the first thing you'll want to do is place your linear motion bearings upside down and place your plate right on top of that. Get your pan head screws. You're gonna need 16 for this part. You're gonna need a 3mm hex socket bit to drive all of these in. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I drove in all the screws, but I did back it off a little bit. You do want some of that wiggle because we're gonna align the rods next. So what you're gonna wanna do is grab your rods and run them through. Now, if you watched the last video, I had you measure the distance between the two, and you know, there's a lot of wiggle room there. So now with these brackets, you just run your rods right through them. Do the same on this side. Now there's no wiggle. There is no wiggle room. And your sled is gonna move freely, and it's perfectly aligned right now. Now, there is still wiggle here, but that's because we haven't tightened up the screws, right? So, but at least you know that the rods are perfectly parallel. So now what you're gonna wanna do is take your bit and go ahead and tighten it down. Okay, so now we have it tightened down. This is pretty much not gonna move anymore. This is pretty tight on there, and you still have free motion for your sled. So you know that your rods are perfectly parallel. Now we can remove the plates. So now we remove the plates and then attach your support brackets to the plates. So let's do that next. Okay, so in your kit, you'll receive 8 countersink screws with nuts. You're gonna take those out. And now we're gonna attach the support brackets onto these plates. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we're gonna wanna tighten down the support brackets, and to do that, you're gonna take your 3mm hex bit, and what I like to use is a 8mm socket to hold down the nut. You don't need it, it just makes it a little bit easier. Again, with the friction of the acrylic, you get a nice, you can make it nice and tight. When you're tightening up these support brackets, you'll notice there's a lot of wiggle. You'll want to push it towards the front so that it's at least aligned with the bracket. And I'll use this socket this time. And then you could tighten it up like that. Do the same thing to this side. Tighten it up. And you'll want to do the same thing to this support bracket as well. Just push it towards the front and tighten it up. Okay. Now the reason you want to tighten it up that way and push it towards the front is you don't want these to be slanted. So kind of like, you know, if these were the support brackets, you don't want them to be like this or like that. You want them to be as straight as possible, and that's going to make it a lot easier when you're assembling the rest of your sled. So let me tighten up this one and we'll get to the rest of the assembly. Okay, so let's finish putting this thing together. First thing you're going to want to do is place your rods through the support brackets on both sides. Okay. So I like to use a square, and I adjust it to about 3/4 of an inch. That would probably be the minimum, but you could do maybe an inch, or if you have longer rods, you could have them extend out further away from you. So I like to do about 3/4 of an inch. Just have my bracket come out to there. The nice thing about all of these screws is that they all use the 3mm socket bit. So go ahead and tighten that up. We'll do the same to this side. All right, so now that that side is tightened, this side doesn't really matter, but we'll try to keep it consistent. And then this side just kind of lines up naturally. Okay, before we finish putting this thing together, you're gonna want to attach your router base onto the plate, because once you assemble it, it's gonna be a lot harder to get underneath it to attach the base. So let's go ahead and do that now. And this is a little bit difficult sometimes if you have a base that is not okay. So you'll just want to make sure that it is nice and secure. And I'm just kind of holding the base and the whole assembly at the same time. So you'll just want to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay. Okay, now you could grab your whole assembly and place it over your bearings. And now you could begin attaching your assembly using the rest of the pan head screws. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we have it almost fully assembled. What we're gonna do now is, so what I like to do is use the edge of my workbench as a reference point. Now remember, this is assuming that you already have your rails screwed down, evenly spaced, and you're good to go. You would get your assembly and slide it all the way to the end, because there's still a little bit of wiggle room on because we haven't attached, or we haven't secured these screws here. But once the bearings are all the way to the end, we know that we're perpendicular to the rails, and now we could begin tightening all the screws. And then you want to do a double check and slide it all the way to the other end. Make sure everything is secured down nice and tight, and and it slides smoothly. So, okay, so just a couple of things I want to mention. When you're tightening the screws, you could use a ratchet, you could hand tighten them if you have a sort of like these little ratchets. Just don't over tighten. You don't need a whole lot of pressure, especially if you're using Loctite. If you know that you're gonna keep it assembled and sort of just tucked away and you're not gonna take it apart, definitely use that Loctite. Tighten it up just enough. You don't want to break the acrylic plate, or you don't want to compromise it. And something that I just realized is that we didn't attach the handles, but I'll attach them as we're talking. So yeah, you don't want to over tighten it, especially with these. You can just tighten it by hand, like so. I'll do this one as well. And now you're good to go. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is the router base. Some models can only be mounted in one direction, and that's because the mounting holes are not symmetrical. So as an example, the Milwaukee, that's one of them, will only mount in one direction. The reason why I have it mounted in this direction versus facing me is because in case you want to use your dust port, you can attach it and it's out of the way and it's not going to interfere with your bearings or your handle. I don't know how much good this does. I've tried it out and it doesn't suck up all the chips, hardly any actually. They just kind of get thrown all over the place. But if you have that option to use your dust port, and that's why it's oriented this way. Other routers and mounts are symmetrical, like Rigid, Ryobi, DeWalt, and so you could kind of place it any direction you want. And again, that's just some of the models, not all of them, so just be aware of that. That's pretty much it, guys. Just wanted to make a quick updated video on how to assemble the new plates onto your support brackets, and just kind of overall, hopefully I answered most of your questions, and if not, please definitely put it in the comments or shoot me an email and I will make sure I answer that as best as I can. All right, I'll catch you on the next one.